we've been operating that legal hotline for decades. And through that hotline, we've really learned about, the issues that come up in transactions and the disputes that arise between buyers and sellers or between clients and their agents. And oftentimes those disputes are caused by ambiguities in contracts that are being used. Okay, so now lawyers love ambiguity because ambiguity is what gives a lawyer on both sides of a dispute the ability to come forward and credibly argue a case for their client, right? But our goal as a forms provider is to prevent those disputes from ever happening. And so one of the things that we were able to do is really take the insights that we've learned from where people do end up in disputes and try to proactively address those by the way that we drafted the form. So, one example where I think that really comes through is in how we've dealt with repairs in the Oregon REALTORS Forms. So one of the biggest sources of disputes that happens in residential real estate transaction is around repairs, and particularly what happens if the repairs were not completed as one of the parties had believed they were required to be completed in the sale agreement. Okay. And so really what needs to happen to address that is one, what the repairs are and how they're to be completed needs to be addressed as specifically as possible in the sale agreement. And then the process to be used and the rights and remedies of the parties, should there be a dispute about those repairs, also needs to be addressed. And we've taken care of both of those things in the Oregon Realtors sale agreement and repair addendum. So in our repair addendum, the parties can use that document to specify which repairs can be done, for example, by a licensed contractor, and which repairs can be done by the seller. There's a date certain by when the repairs need to be completed. And then we actually have a form that we've developed that the seller uses to notify the buyer when the repairs are completed. The buyer has a reinspection process to review those repairs. And then the buyer can use that same form to notify the seller if the buyer believes there's deficiency in the repairs. Then a process is spelled out for the seller to take another crack at those repairs. And then at that point, if the buyer believes that they're still not done properly, the buyer can issue a termination notice under our forms, terminate the transaction, and receive a receipt of their earnest money. So really what we've tried to do is kind of from the beginning to the end of the process, spell it out so that parties know what to expect and they know what their rights are. See, one of the things that we would always hear on the hotline is those questions come in about, hey, my buyer believes that the repairs weren't done properly. What can they do next? Do they have a right to terminate? If they do terminate, will they keep their earnest money? And we kind of always had to shrug our shoulders and say, it depends, right? Because we don't know all the facts. And as I mentioned, if there's any ambiguity, there might be a credible argument on both sides. So by spelling it out in the forms, we've really created a process where we don't need to receive those calls on the hotline because people now understand what they're supposed to do, both in notifying about the repairs and in notifying and following through if there are any disputes about the repairs.
So having all this information that you've learned through the years of monitoring the legal hotline and having a forms task force with members that are very involved in managing and forms review is what helped develop the forms that we have
I think
distributed today.
Collectively, there was really decades of experience between the really talented group of principal brokers that we had from around the state, along with the years and years of legal hotline questions that we'd received. And of course, we've been putting together all these risk management tools that I talked about earlier for our members to try to get at some of these issues. But with the forms, we really were able to hit them head on and try to prevent them before they even arise.